Hello, everyone. I'll just wait for some time till everyone's joining.
No worries. Good to see you, Anamita. Thank
Good
you
to see you
for
too,
hosting,
Nick
and
Nina.
I'll just share my screen.
Yeah, so I think we have most of the attendees who signed up have joined now. So welcome everybody to today's webinar. And today we are going to delve into the transformative power of AI-driven solutions, especially Proteus, and what it can do for the maritime industry. And so over the next 30 minutes, we'll be exploring how the tool helps and how it can give you and your team the speed, agility, and accuracy to access the information you need and when you need it from your huge data sets that you have. And since we really want to hear from all of you during this discussion webinars, so I would request all of you, please ask questions, share your thoughts, ideas, and let's make the most out of this webinar. And welcome again. And I will now hand it over to Nick Clark, CEO of Greywing, and he's accompanied by his colleague, Meghna Ray.
Brilliant. Thank you, Anamita, and delighted to be on this webinar, and really grateful for the partnership that we've built with Dataloy over the past 2 years as a partner, giving us access to your platform and enabling us to harness the power of the APIs that you guys have got to take the data out and to turn it into actionable intelligence, whether that's a crew change or whether that's a commercial decision, has been a fantastic adventure for us. So it's my intention over the next 30 minutes to give you guys 4 different use cases around how we have harnessed generative AI, applied it to a ChatGPT type interface, and empowered it with other tooling that we've built to enable you to turn the data that sits within Dataloy into intelligence or actionable insights that you can use. So, broadly speaking, we sit in an industry where a lot of your data is trapped in silos. That might be in market reports, it might be within your crewing software, it might be within your voyage management system, pre-fixture software, or maybe even within your charter parties. And if you think of your day-to-day, probably a lot of it is either spent gathering this data, waiting for this data, or asking someone else to go and get the data if you don't have to do it yourself. So from our perspective, the way that we looked at the introduction of generative AI was it really replaces for us the mouse, essentially, or the keyboard, in terms of how you can give a system a query. So it's really taken away the requirement to type or the requirement to use a mouse to navigate software, to just enable you to talk and to really ask for what you want and to pull that out of your platforms. So we've developed Proteus, which broadly speaking plugs into whatever systems you like, including your VMS. And what we see that doing is giving you the ability to drill down directly into that data and those rich seams of data, if you like, that that have value, but you're often unable to turn into maybe or to monetize, into actionable intelligence. So Proteus for commercial, you can query or talk to your voyage and cargo data to assess patterns, ask for TCE rates, find out, what's going on with a specific charter or a specific voyage or a specific operator. You can, I don't know about predict cargo trends, but you can certainly query market reports and ask them, given the market reports that we've received over the past month, what are the freight rates looking like for a vessel that's coming open in week 20 or 22 at Houston, for example. And if we've got the market reports and they've got some insights, then you can generate that insight as well. And then, of course, you can turn it all into graphics and tables, and you can do it in a couple of seconds. So in terms of what makes our technology unique, we've got a provisional patent that we've put in with the Singapore government for the AI. And that, broadly speaking, is around the orchestration model that we use to blend in with different models. So I won't get into it too much, but we plug into whichever models our customers would like us to. And that, of course, includes Anthropic, OpenAI, and Mistral and Llama as well. We're also one of the few providers who's comfortable working with very large data sets, so it's millions of rows. And so, when we're kind of found in a challenging situation where we have a lot of data, like the amount of data that sits within Dataloy, and you need to turn that into intelligence within seconds, we're very capable of doing that. And then the other thing that we have as a strength is over 30 different integrations with technology partners that put us in a position to be able to plug in to your data as simply as the integration that we have with Dataloy, which I think is the gold standard of partnerships that we've had in the maritime industry. So you get a low integration load, you get a direct plugin. There's other ways that we can plug into your data as well, but I would broadly say that the API is the best standard. Okay, brilliant. So that's a short introduction. Please, as we go along, feel free to populate Zoom with questions, as I'm happy for it to be back and forth. And I've already got one from Klaus Nemzo. Good to see you, Klaus. Thanks for joining on. Curious what you think about the long tail of small ship owners in this context. Is this sophisticated technology enabler for perhaps not so tech savvy folks, or another difficult hurdle to overcome? Well, I mean, it's probably outside the scope of this webinar, but I'd broadly say the challenge that smaller ship owners will have is the integration load. And we've built something called a magic ETL pipeline that automates integration. So you can just drag and drop whatever data you've got into Proteus, and you can use it. So whilst a lot of leading ship operators will have a gold standard API integration with Dataloy's VMS, of course, many others may be operating on Excel. And where they do, then it's pretty robust and pretty easy for them to use as well. From a drag and drop perspective. But thanks for the question, Klaus, and good to hear from you. So I'll just share my screen again. You can tell how excited I am because I'm a little bit breathless. Okay, cool. So this is Proteus. You can see the Dataloy voyage data that we've plugged into down here. We can also plug into other data sources as well. So whether it's crewing, technical, whatever data you want to have a talk to, we can plug into it. And broadly speaking, we've got different tooling that we've built, whether it's airport search, flight search, crew analytics, charter analytics. And these are all tools that can deliver certain outcomes in the same way that some of your team might be better at certain jobs. Some of these tools are better at certain jobs than others. But what I'm really going to focus on is how do we get actionable intelligence out of the data that we can pull from Dataloy? So let's get straight into it. Who are the top 3 charterers that we've worked with? So, I mean, of course, I can just talk to Proteus. I'll try and break it later on, maybe, by talking as quickly as I can, and I'll see if it picks up all of the language. But I'd say the biggest thing our customers care about is getting paid. And there's probably no easier way to pull up a list of overdue invoices than to just ask Proteus to develop them for you. And what you can see here is it's set up an AI agent. So you've got one of the agents has gone in, it's doing the work. What you'll see later on as I'm demonstrating the platform is it can set up multiple AI agents to work in parallel. So instead of working on individual tasks sequentially, as ChatGPT might, this will actually develop a series of queries and then work on them all at the same time, so that you've got 5, 10, 15 different agents working for you. Could you give me a breakdown of the revenue that we've earned with each of those charterers? So it's pulled up the data. It's given me a sense, and this is the demonstration data that we were given when we integrated with Dataloy. So I'm grateful to Dataloy for populating the platform with demonstration data. But if you're wondering why you're seeing Goofy instead of Cargill, it's because it's just demo data. But it's super easy. Okay, it's pulled out the revenue with the top 3 charterers that we've worked with, and then I can drill down again, and I might say, do we have any outstanding invoices above $50,000 with Goofy? Can you give me an itemized list? So Goofy owes us 26 million. So let's have a look at some of those larger invoices and have a think about whether or not those are worth chasing. And again, it's super easy to ask the question. It's found what I imagine are 23 invoices, but what I suspect will happen is that it won't give us all 23, or will it? Okay. Okay. So Goofy actually has 23 invoices in excess of $50,000. So, I mean, that was pretty quick. And I think this is the real value proposition that we offer when we partner with Dataloy, is the ability to take all of that information that your team, you know, on the commercial accounting, chartering side, spends so much time putting into the platform, and then being able to, you know, pull up that data as quickly as you need to, whether, you know, you're on your phone and you're heading to see a customer, or whether you're, you know, just sat at your desk and wondering exactly, you know, who can you get to pay you this month so you can cover your bills. Can you write an email to Goofy, addressed to accounts payable, itemizing the outstanding invoices above $50,000 that they have outstanding with us, and request them to confirm a settlement date? And then, of course, I mean, simple things like asking it to put that into an email so that we can, you know, then copy that and send it off is super easy. So, you know, I think what you're beginning to see is that we've got these tools that we've built. We've got the data that we're pulling from Dataloy, and then we've got all of the functionality that you would expect from a large language model in terms of, you know, being that co-pilot, being that assistant, and helping you move through your daily tasks much faster. So if that's looking at charter data, let's have a look at what I might call cargo handling costs, which is another big point that we get from customers. Is if I'm setting up a charter, I just want to know, you know, for my freight rate, what were the last 4 cargo handling costs that I might have paid at a specific port of call. Can you give me a breakdown of the top 5 ports of call where our vessels have had port calls? So again, super easy to talk. You can actually use any language. The only language we've noticed that doesn't work so far is Burmese. I've actually never had anyone try it in Norwegian. So that's a bit of an open question mark, but I'm pretty sure it will work. But whether it's Mandarin, Hindi, or Romanian, you know, those have all worked perfectly. Can you give me a breakdown on the average cargo handling costs for Rotterdam by querying the voyage data records and excluding all null or zero values? So one of the things I noticed is that sometimes when someone's maybe setting up a freight rate, or, you know, putting data into the platform, they might not always fill out all of the items, and so you might have some zero or null values. And so what I can do is, if there's values that I'm not sure about, or they're null or they're zeros, so that I get a good average, or a true average, I would say, I can just ask the platform to exclude all of those values that are null or zeros, so that I make sure I get a true picture of what my average cargo handling costs are going to be, you know, very, very quickly. So I don't know how long it takes you to get average cargo handling cost for, you know, the past 5 ports of call you've done at a specific port. But this is really how we're thinking about speeding up your day, in terms of being able to take you through these points. So I've just noticed a question. So I think from Joris. Curious to know how Proteus validates accuracy of the insights being surfaced. So this is a great question, and it's one we get all the time. Because is the data that you're seeing in Proteus the same as the data that we're pulling for that you would otherwise see in Dataloy? And I suppose the way to think about this is Proteus isn't making any inferences. It's not making up figures. It's not giving you estimates. Really, what we've built is the ability to query data. So what we're saying is, we're saying to the data in Dataloy, Proteus is going in and saying, show me all of the cargo handling costs that we've had at Rotterdam that are neither zero nor null. And those costs are, you know, structured, they're fixed data. So, you know, they cannot change from the point where you ask and where they're shown to you, because you've not asked Dataloy to imagine that data. You've not asked it to have a guess. You've not asked it to go on the internet and search and come back with its best effort. The kind of real value of the large language model in terms of what we're doing right now is so that you can talk to it, you can structure a request, and then that request goes into the data and gives you the answers as if you'd look for them yourself. So yeah, I think there's definitely, you know, where's the risk sit? Well, the risk sits really with Proteus misunderstanding what you say. And so you might say, so what's a good example? You know, you might ask for a specific question. You might say to it, a common one that I have actually is I say to Proteus, you know, this is an example that I use for a demo. I say to a Proteus, I say, can you give me an example, or can you give me two? And actually, can you give me two masters who have readiness dates in April, who also have a US visas, or do we have any? So I say, do we have any masters with readiness date in April who hold a US visa? And Proteus sometimes just comes back and says, yes. You know, and I'm like, okay, all right, well, can you tell me their names? So I think the relationship that you'll build up with Proteus is very similar, and this is how I describe it to customers, to the type of relationship you might build up with one of your team members. You'll really begin to understand what's the best way to communicate with Proteus. And what you might notice is when I talk to Proteus, I try and really enunciate my terms so that I, you know, communicate clearly. It's actually almost like I'm speaking on a radio in the military, where having concise and clear communication was important to make sure that the right message was delivered. And in the same way, I'm also thinking about that when I communicate with Proteus, so that the words that it hears are the words that I say. But yeah, to cut a long story short, if the data is correct in Dataloy, that's the data you're going to see. And Proteus is really only making an inference around the question that you're asking. Okay, so we've looked at cargo handling costs. What should we look at now? What about fuel consumption? Can you give me a breakdown of the average fuel consumption over the last 10 voyages for my bulk fleet? So this is an interesting one. You know, having access to data around, you know, what the costs are, you know, how much fuel you're using, what the averages are looking like. And it's interesting here because it's only really heard part of the question. Maybe I didn't click the microphone promptly enough, but it's still actually been able to get the sense, or, you know, the essence of the question that I was asking. And then it's sending out an agent to do the research. And so this is a question that I'm not sure how long it would take you if you had to go into the data, find out what the fuel consumption was, find out what the voyage distances were, and then to do that for 10 separate vessels, and then to pull that data back in. It might be quite challenging. Okay, so it timed out, and what it's done is it said, yeah, okay, we're going to go straight back in and try again. Whilst it does that, I'm just going to pull up a question from our Hackmarian. If we assume that models are trained on Dataloy, how confident can you be that AI would read my data correctly? I.e., on your example on cargo handling, my own assumption for cargo handling costs might differ from the trained data one. So this is a good question because, you know, our models aren't necessarily trained on Dataloy. They're trained to go in and query your data. So there isn't going to be a risk that because the models are used to a different way of interpreting data, that they're not going to query your data accurately. It's just going to return whatever data you would normally have. And you don't really run a risk that there might be, you know, a model that's not trained on your specific interpretation of how the data would be. Whatever data you put into Dataloy is the data that you're going to get back. So if you've got a slightly different way of doing that, I'd assume that when you see the data come up, you're already going to say, okay, well, that's what I put in, that's what I'd expect to see, and this is what I would deduce from that presentation or that data. But if that's not a good answer, Ara, please feel free to follow up with another question. So it's given me an average fuel consumption over the last 10 voyages for the bulk fleet. And what I might say is, can you give me a breakdown of the fuel consumption for my last 10 voyages on a per voyage basis? And can you give it to me in a bar chart referencing each data point with the vessel name and voyage start date? So what I've done is I've asked it to take the data that it's researched and then to turn that into a visual image, if you like, or a graphic to help me visualize exactly what I'm seeing. And we can do this with bar charts, we can do it with line graphs, we can do it with pie charts. It's super simple. And what you can see here is it's gone through, it's come up with a query. Actually, if I click these results, it's going to give me the ability to download them as an Excel, maybe just in case you need to. But it also gives me a heads up on the information that's coming in. And then it's also set up that graph as well to give me an average breakdown on all of the fuel consumption. So again, from that perspective, we could also say, well, do we want to calculate the average fuel consumption per nautical mile? So we can also try to do that. Is it possible by querying the voyage data records to look at all those voyages and tell me how much fuel was consumed on average per nautical mile traveled? So we've got an anonymous attendee. Are you able to compare Dataloy data with the actual consumption data from a vessel reporting system, which is also connected to Proteus? Yes. So you can query different data sets, and you could also ask for comparisons. It's the same technology applied to a different data set or a different API connection, or even a different Excel workbook. Okay, brilliant. So it's broken it down. It's given me an average fuel consumption of approximately 0.097 metric tons per nautical mile. So yeah, that's how we might drill down into fuel consumption. Okay, so the next thing I've got is a little bit off-piste. And I think it was a bit of an adventure that I went on earlier. When I looked at the metric tons consumption per nautical mile, and I thought to myself, can you check the voyage data records and give me the average fuel consumption for the Dataloy Arrow over the past 10 voyages on a per nautical mile basis? So what I'm doing is we were playing around with questioning fuel consumption. Now we're actually going in to say, okay, just for this one vessel, what's its average fuel consumption over the past 10 voyages? And then, we'll get a figure, I imagine, and then we'll see what we can do with that. And also, what I'll do now is I'll try and break Proteus by talking as quickly as I can. So forgive me if you don't understand what I'm saying, but with a bit of luck, Proteus will. The Dataloy Arrow vessel is currently a Malta, and I need you to price 2 voyages for me. The first voyage is for Charterer Alpha, sailing from Malta via the Red Sea to Singapore at a daily OPEX rate of $9,200, a daily charter rate of $49,000 a day with a lump sum fee of $400,000 for war risk insurance, and the bunker cost is $500 per ton. The second voyage is for Charterer Bravo from Malta via the Cape of Good Hope, then to Singapore at the same OPEX rate of $9,200 a day, and a daily charter rate of $30,000 a day, and also at $500 a day dollars per ton of fuel. Can you calculate the fuel consumption on the basis of the average fuel consumption per nautical mile that you previously calculated for the Dataloy Arrow, and give me an overall estimate for each of these voyages? What I want to see is a percentage differential between the profit that I make for each one, and I want all of the results to be given to me in a table with headings and outlining what the values are in each of the rows. Okay, I did my best. I'm a little breathless. But with a bit of luck, it's gonna, I mean, maybe it will break. but with a bit of luck, it will capture all that information. And then, broadly speaking, give me a rough calculation. Now, of course, it's never going to be a voyage calculator, but you might just be wondering very quickly, if I've got two options, two different things that I'm looking at, which is the optimal one. And you might just want to, get that information back, and you can pull that information out of Dataloy. You can turn it into an actual insight, and then you're empowered. Let's say you're, out at lunch, negotiating a deal, you step away from the table just to get a quick insight into, okay, what actually are the best option that I'm dealing with? You can have that co-pilot in your hand. So it's doing the work for me. You can see it's actually set up a few different AI agents to go out and look at the sea route distances. And then it's going to turn that into voyages, and then it's going to look at the fuel consumption, and it's going to do all of the heavy lifting in the background. And whilst it's doing that, I'm going to answer this question. If we connect a cargo database, would Proteus find the closest vessel based on LACAN? Good question. If it's something that you could find in the cargo database, then it's something that Proteus could find. I'm a little bit out of my depth, I would say, on that question. But so far, if it's something that you could explain to me, then you can explain it to Proteus. Is it possible to set user permissions to disallow a user querying financial data while still being able to query consumption data? Yeah, no problem. We can, set up what data sources people would have access to, and even within the data sources, what they would be able to query. Brilliant. So I think that's the end of my presentation. And what I hope that we've been able to demonstrate is the power of generative AI and how you can apply it to the data that sits within Dataloy, and how you can take the data that you've been putting into Dataloy, for years, and turn that into actionable insights and intelligence you can use in your day-to-day operations to more effectively gain a competitive advantage within the marketplace. So I think I'll wrap things up there, but I'd be happy to take questions or complaints if anyone's got any. Or otherwise, I'm really grateful to have had the opportunity to do this talk today. And what I'd like to do is to just say a very big thank you to the engineering team at Greywing and my co-founder for building such awesome technology that I'm privileged enough to be able to show it to some leaders in the market. And also to say to the team at Dataloy, Bernard and Anamita, thank you for being such stars in hosting us today and giving us the opportunity to explain this to your customers. I've got one more question. Hendrik Mayer, please ask Proteus, do we have cargo ready at Timor on the 1st of April? Which is the closest vessel available? So I won't ask Proteus that, because I don't know what the closest vessel available is going to be. And I also don't know if there's any cargo at Timor on the 1st of April. So I think it's definitely a question that you could ask your data if you wanted to. But if Proteus isn't prepped for it, or Proteus isn't, plugged into your data, then it's not going to give a response. Sorry, Anamita, did you have a question?
Yes, we have a couple of questions as well. Just let me. Yes, there's one that, how is this product different from using ChatGPT or any other open source LLM model?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I think, a lot of customers that we've worked with have plugged into ChatGPT via the API and had really bad outcomes. And so the difference that we've created is we've got a few different products that we've released into the market that give us an advantage. So my co-founder Rishi's actually built a product called Wishful Search, which enables people to search, millions of data rows, which gives them an advantage. And that's actually a innovation within generative AI more widely. If we go back and look at the first page, so what we have is within ChatGPT, you might have the ability to use a couple of tools. You might have the ability to use airport search or flight search, but within Greywing, you can actually set up a bespoke environment with the tools that you want, whether you want to use everything, whether you want to custom select the tools that you're going to be responsible for, you're going to be using. And this loops back into the question that someone asked earlier about having the ability to restrict what people can use. And then we've got the ability to draw charts, calculate sea route distances, math expressions, web search. So there is a lot of overlap with ChatGPT, but what we really bring is the ability to search millions of rows of data that you'd be unable to do with ChatGPT. And then we also give you the ability to plug into data from Dataloy and turn that into actionable insights, which so far we haven't seen anyone else in the market able to do, with the APIs that are pretty freely available to everyone from large language models. How well does Greywing perform on unstructured or semi-structured data? Really well, to be honest. So I'd say if Proteus is our product, which is focused on querying structured data or data that sits within a VMS or a database, we've got another product called Ocean Oracle, which is purely focused on querying unstructured data, whether that sits in a PDA, an FDA, a document. We've also got the IP for technology that's got the ability to read complex diagrams, including PNID schematics. So we've done a project recently with BWLNG that you may have seen on LinkedIn, where we were actually able to import cargo and machinery operation, cargo handling and machinery operations manuals, so that the crew could have the same kind of conversation that we've gone through here with Dataloy with complex manuals. But yeah, we can pretty much do anything that's unstructured or semi-structured at a high level of competence. And I can talk more to you about that, maybe not within this session if you want to. Sorry, Anamita, these questions keep coming through. I know you had some.
Yes. What is the AI behind this product? And if you could shed any light on the pricing.
Yeah, sure. So what is the AI behind this product? So this is a multi-model product, and the the IP that we own is the ability for model orchestration. So we plug into OpenAI, Anthropic, Amazon. We plug into open source models if our customers require it. So some customers don't want to use large commercially available large language models. They want to actually host their own model, which gives them great outcomes in terms of data privacy and security, if you like, because they can host them on their own service. But it diminishes the level of performance that the model's often able to deliver. And the way that we work is that we have an orchestration layer where basically we look at every query that comes into Greywing and we decide which model we're going to send it to. So if we have a simple query come in, we might say, okay, cool, this query is very simple. We're going to send it to ChatGPT 3.5, low cost model, great for just your, everyday average queries. If we have a query come in that's got a high level of GDPR or personally identifiable information, we might say, okay, we're actually going to send that to a model that's got either open source model that is hosted away from a large language model provider, or we might choose to send it to a model that's got a higher rating from a data protection regime in terms of the data protection that they have in place. And that's also true that we've had some customers who have said, look, if we work together, that we will not send anything to OpenAI. So you have to bring us other alternatives that are more palatable to us, because as part of the way that we operate and how we are and our data protection requirements, we won't send anything to OpenAI. So you've got to give us alternatives. And then, of course, if we have really challenging queries come in, we would most likely, where we needed that high level of performance, there's two ways that we deal with them. We'd either send them to a model where we'd given it more reasoning or context so that it could handle that specific query, or we would just send it to ChatGPT 4. because normally ChatGPT 4's got a wider range of context itself, and it can interpret and deliver on much more complex queries without as much prompt engineering as you might need for smaller models. So I'd say broadly, we plug into a lot of different models. Depending on the query we get, we send the query to the model we think will perform the best, whether that's in terms of speed, cost, or data privacy. And I hope that answers that question, because it's a complex one to get into.
Yes. So what is the scope of questions you can ask your data?
This is the best question I think I've been asked, because I don't know. You know, the truth is the only way we're going to find out is to get it into the hands of as many people as possible and find out what people can do with it, because there is no limitation on the question that you can ask. I think some of the questions that I ask ChatGPT are the ramblings of a madman. Sometimes that's how they feel. You know, I interrupt myself, I double back, I, you know, change my mind on what it is that I want to know. And, you know, Proteus is still able to deliver, you know, these insights and that information. So what I'd say is, if you want to know what it's able to do, I'd spin it up, try it out, and see what you can do with it, and see how far you can take it, and try and break it, because, you know, that might be fun. It's not going to have any issues on your data. Your data is going to be fine. You're just going to be querying your data. You're going to be getting results, and you're going to, you know, find out, you know, how far you can take generative AI and its ability to give you actionable insights. And to circle back to what you were talking about earlier on, Anamita, rightly or wrongly, we've decided to give Dataloy customers just the best deal on a Greywing or Proteus subscription. So we will give you a subscription for the rest of the year for $995 a month. And what that means, with no limit on users and no limit on vessels, but just with the Dataloy data. And what that means is, if you operate in excess of 50 vessels, this is cheaper than a ChatGPT subscription. So I don't know if that's a commercially viable model, and I guarantee you we will put the price up on the 1st of January 2025. But if you want a low-cost way that's super easy to get past your boss or to get approval on, so that you can find out how far we can take this thing, then yeah, just dive in. You know, I think we've pretty much removed any financial barrier to really finding out how far we can take this thing.
So just following up on that price that you shared, Nick, is there like a subscription period, or do people need to
Yeah, good
subscribe for a
question.
year, or there is
I mean,
cancellation?
we were just going to open it up for the rest of the year. I mean, look, if you guys want to cancel, then no problem, cancel. But pretty much, I mean, you know, rest of the year, come on. If you're not happy, you can go. No big deal. But I'm definitely putting the price up on the 1st of January. I mean, this is an insane price. And I think, you know, we're excited to get it to market. We're excited to start working together. I think there's some really exciting things to do, but we're pretty relaxed about giving this away if we're working with serious partners that really want to innovate on the edge of what's possible, you know, and develop a competitive advantage for themselves that their customers are unable to, or their competitors are unable to match.
Nick, I have one last question from my side as of now, but you already spoke about the accuracy of the data from Proteus, but is there a possibility of data hallucination happening?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I've never seen data hallucination within Proteus. The only risk is that it misunderstands the question that you ask. So that's the only reason why you would get an incorrect answer. I think the thing is that we've been working at this for over a year. I think we released our first AI product in maybe 1st of April 2023, and we were building products internally. So we've basically just eliminated hallucinations from the products that we've been building. And we'd already achieved that by the time we released our first product, which was called CGPT. and you can see the release for that on LinkedIn in April. And broadly speaking, you know, CGPT was communicating with board agents to source pricing for crew changes. And yeah, I think, you know, we had some hallucination issues when we were building it, but by the time we got it into production, they were all solved. So you won't see them, and you particularly won't see them around your data, because it's just showing you your data in terms of whatever's in Dataloy is what you're going to see. And I know this because I've you know, analyzed all the answers that we generate from the deployments that we have to track them back to the original data points that sit within the VMS. And I mean, it's a thankless task, but I've never seen anything that wasn't logically backed up by the data. I'd say, Torben, what's the price from 1st Jan of 2025? Very reasonable price. I won't mention it on the chat because I know some of our competitors were also kind enough to join, although they may not have a product in the market yet. But happy to discuss if you want to follow up afterwards. So CGPT, someone asked about this. So we've rebranded CGPT to Proteus. And, you know, broadly speaking, I think we were getting some confusion between ChatGPT and CGPT. And so we thought to ourselves, we'll just make a really clear break. And so it's just a clear-cut Proteus. But yeah, that's a good question.
So are there any more questions, ideas anyone would like to share?
Yeah, thank you, Hendrik. That's a really, really kind comment.
Yes, I think, Nick, it was a great presentation. The product looks good. For me, it's like a combination of ChatGPT and Alexa together. So, but yes, I hope it helped everyone. And thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. And to answer that last question, there is an API with Dataloy. I mean, you guys just have to give us permission to plug in and we can set you up. Thank you. Good to hear from you. Really kind of you to host us. I appreciate that, Anamita and Bernard. And yeah, have a lovely evening, everyone. I think it's past my bedtime.
The recording will be available after, so all the invitees will get the link if you want to review it. I think someone asked that question before, but thanks for joining.
Thanks, Arena. That's really kind. Lovely to see everyone, and I look forward to catching up with you soon.
Yes. Good.
Cool. Take care, guys.